we're having, and hopefully our power will stay on, because it's been on and off this morning. So what I want to share with you today is about peace education through the performing arts. The performing arts are very, very powerful for helping humans learn, heal, grow in their skills, find jobs, entertain each other. They're useful in many, many ways. And so, but this presentation is going to focus a lot on well-being and learning. So peace education through the performing arts. So expansion of self-knowledge occurs through creative expression. However you creatively express yourself, you become more aware of your own thinking as you see, oh, look what I just created, or look what I just painted, or look what I just came up with in choreography of a dance. It's revealing about what's really in your mind, and also how your body expresses it. So it's a great way to learn about yourself. And of course, when you're around others who are using creativity, you learn about them, their art forms, and what they're expressing. And of course, all of that's very interpretive. When you're looking at somebody else's creativity and you're interpreting it through your perspective of life, your viewpoint of life, unless you're talking to the artist and getting the artist's perceptions of the work. But so it's very interpretive. All creativity is, but when you do it yourself, you're learning about yourself in that process. Hence the value in education. Participation in performance art heightens knowledge and well-being. We know that the arts have been used for therapy, have been used for just creativity as a break from the grind of just in school, of just sitting and doing, pencil, paper, and thinking, and just your traditional, if you will, in modern education tasks. And creativity is a break from that, and and that break is helpful to your well-being, just as physical activity away from sitting and being inside buildings is very helpful too. Non-rational. Non-rational means not using the mind to try to name what's going on through language. Trying to say, okay, this is the term for this idea, no matter what language you're using. So rationality became very, very forefronted, popular, if you will, in the disciplines, all across the disciplines, particularly during the Enlightenment. And the thinkers coming out of Europe especially wanted to claim that knowledge was based on rational thinking and evidence, hard evidence, evidence that we could say, here's the data, and we can show you the data, and this is the meaning of this. And so that was rational thinking. And so all these other ways of knowing, which humans had practiced throughout her history, were pushed aside. So spiritual connection, physical knowing, interactions through the arts, a lot of that was pushed aside as a way of understanding what's going on, and if it's not helping you understand so much, then it's not really worth teaching in schools. So non-rational is not tying learning to just those processes, just rational thinking and things that can be described in language and proven with evidence. Embodied experiences means the body is participating in some way, not just the mind. The body is moving. The body has sensations. The body is using all of its senses to expand awareness of itself, and it's a precursor to and others. So non-rational and embodied experiences expand awareness of your own knowledge about yourself. You understand yourself better when you have this holistic opportunity to move and to feel and to know, not tied necessarily to rationality and language. Self-awareness of inner conflict occurs through performance. So we've talked a little, and I'm going to go into in a minute again as a reminder the different types of conflict that we categorize. But right now I'm just going to say self-awareness of inner conflict occurs through performance. When you're in performance, you recognize your feelings, you recognize your emotions, you recognize your needs, and so you become more self-aware because you're performing. And quite often you have an audience, not always, but quite often you have an audience. And so you're thinking more about yourself and what you're doing. So it's a great way to become more self-aware. Hence, that's why therapists are learning more and more to use performance of some type to help people understand what's going on in themselves. Intrapersonal conflict. That's the one within ourselves, within our mind, within our bodies, if not our mind. Interpersonal conflict is a root of mental and physical unwellness. So whatever it is that we're stuck with up there or working on, which we might not even be consciously aware of, can lead to our mental unwellness and our physical unwellness. And you'll learn to recognize this if you haven't already in students in school. And of course, other places. Excuse me. Creative expression of self in performance enables understanding. So this is just another way of saying, when you bring out your creativity, you understand yourself better. Artistic ways of knowing through performance are extra-rational and holistic. Extra-rational is just another way to say not based on rational thinking. And holistic, we talk about using the whole body and the environment around us. Holistic, the senses and the mind. Skill building in performing arts also enhances communication and interaction capabilities with self and others. Yes, because a lot of performing arts, even if somebody else is not joining them in the performance on stage, the audience is communicating with the performer, or the choreographer of the dance, or the director of the play, or the music is communicating with the performer. And so the performer is getting feedback on what they're doing. And that communication is very, very helpful. You know, we give feedback to students all the time on, okay, how are you doing in your writing? How are you doing in your computation? How are you doing in your knowledge development? We give feedback all the time. But in performance, we can give feedback in different ways than just language and grading and assessment of those traditional ways that modern education has been using. Comprehension through acting. So comprehension of a concept increases through physical experience with it through acting. I'm going to give you an opportunity with this later today. This is our only PowerPoint, and later on I'm going to give you an opportunity to do this. So comprehension, understanding, it's not just knowing of, it's acting it out. What does it really mean? What does this concept really mean? Oh, I have to go show it with my body now. Or I have to dance it. I have to make up a dance that expresses this concept. Or I have to write a song and perform it, actually play my instrument. I use that one a lot in my classes. I have my students write songs about what they learned instead of tests. Performance for peace. Participation in performance art is a creative strategy of peace education. Structural, cultural, interpersonal, and intrapersonal conflicts are interrelated categories used for addressing indirect and direct violence that the body as well as mind remember after harm occurs. So the body knows when it's been harmed, and that incident, that harm may not be on your mind all the time, because you can only have so much on your mind all the time. Although when you go to sleep, these things come up more in your dreams and your nightmares. But the body remembers harm. And so therapists try to find the sources of those harms And when they're working with the body, where in the body is that harm? Not too many therapists have I encountered that are working with the body. Those who are working on mental health, I have not encountered a lot working with the body, but I do know of some practices. It's just I only know one person who's doing that kind of body work, and the others I just know of the practice. But anyway, one type of practice is dance therapy. So having people create a dance, move with their bodies, and basically a dance is just moving with your body, or walking, even if you will. It doesn't have to have music. Just create a dance that expresses how you feel. And sometimes the body will carry you there. So I'm not a dance therapist, but I do know that there are degree programs in that, and that the practice is expanding in modern times. I know of a body worker, if you will, who has transitioned from working with humans to working with animals. But what he does is he puts his hands on the animal and he finds the area of trauma by touching the animal gently. And he can find the area of trauma, and then he stays there and he communicates with that animal to release that trauma. Because the body remembers. So this is a review of what we already have seen, but I think it's important to have these concepts clear again as we go through this. So types of conflicts, the typologies, these are again what Johann Galtung created as categories for us, and they've just been very, very useful for talking about peace and conflict. So interpersonal conflict is evidenced by negative self-conception and negative emotions and self-harm. Drug abuse of any type is often a characteristic of interpersonal conflict. Addictions just make it worse for people who have those problems. Their self-esteem often goes down, and their interpersonal conflict gets bigger and harder to manage. Interpersonal, conflictual expressions and interactions, distrust, lack of repair, those evidence, they're the between people conflicts. And this, as I've mentioned before in this program, are the most common conflicts that students in schools think about, and a lot of adults too. When you say, "Oh, what kind of conflicts are there?" They don't think about interpersonal, or they don't mention it hardly ever. Yet that's the first place most conflicts grow from. But they think about interpersonal. How are we people getting along with each other and so forth? Do we trust them? If we had a problem with them, do we repair that problem? So those are interpersonal relations and conflicts. Structural can be the hidden curriculum. What is not spoken is the curriculum, but what is the arrangement in the learning place or even out in society? Because your interactions in society do constitute a curriculum for those who are interacting with you and watching you. Oppression is another form of structural conflict. It's probably the biggest one that we talk about and think about. Of course, injustices too. Especially we've been talking about that in our human rights part of this program. And finally, cultural conflict, we talked about this a little bit earlier, is evidenced by essentialism, giving somebody one label. This is their identity. That's what that is. This is this one identity. This is one label for this person or this whole group of people. And that denies them so much when you do that. That's big generalizations or just one label for one person just does not address their whole person and all their talents and all their capabilities and all their meaning. So that's a cultural conflict. It's often characterized by isms, words that end in ism, racism, sexism, all those things. are cultural. And then finally, discrimination. Discrimination that is characterized by injustice. Yeah, it evidences cultural conflict. Okay. So now I'm going to segue into the applied performing arts. This presentation is about performing arts versus the graphic arts, the painting, drawing, so forth, because there's a lot about that already in practice and in publication. So I want to look at applied performing arts. So this is a term, applied, is becoming very popular as a term because the performing arts has been picked up by human rights and been picked up by peace education and other social justice-oriented pursuits to say, we're using this to achieve a goal. So yes, we're using the performing arts. We're out there. Okay, we want to be creative. We want to have the characteristics that are so important to performance, but we're using this performance for the purpose of doing something besides advancing the arts and expressing the arts and learning through doing the arts and understanding each other, all that. So, okay, so applied performing arts. It's a growing, there are many books coming out about it now. My book here talks a lot about applied performing arts. Everybody who wrote for me in there explains their conception of applied performing arts. Okay, so applied theater and dance are strategies of creative expression for embodied awareness and healing. Now, this is what we talked about earlier. You know through performance and creativity more about yourself. You can heal yourself better, and you learn through embodied interaction and embodied knowing. Intrapersonal dynamics that result from conflict can be expressed in a performance. Through acting and dancing, people can communicate in a creative way that rational language does not express. And here's a quote. Through applied theater, anyone can participate in envisioning, modeling, rehearsing, and demanding a more just world. And this is Rachel Rhodes, who has written about this quite extensively. So psychodrama is just one example of it I'm going to share with you now. Psycho, meaning like psychology, combined with drama, theatrical performance. And drama doesn't have to be theatrical. You can also, write the scripts, make the scenes, make the costumes. You can contribute to drama in many ways besides being an actor. So psychodrama, Barbara Shellhammer describes psychodrama as a means of self-care, especially for encountering the unknown other in the self. The therapeutic performance enables intrapersonal dialogue through interpersonal encounters. So let me elaborate what psychodrama is. So psychodrama is done by people who are trained to create a skit, a short performance, not a full-fledged play with a script. There is no script in psychodrama. It's improvisational. It's made up right there by the actors who are acting it out. My experience with it was when I was working at St. Martin's University. The Department of Counselors decided to specialize in this. Their department chair was a scholar of it. And so all of the students who were in counseling psychology learned to do psychodrama, and they actually created a performance group, and they practiced in the community by having events where people could come in for free and join their event and experience psychodrama. So what they did was they listened to people's story, and then they created a skit about that story. And they did it not with the person in the skit, but about the person's conflict. So the story would be about some kind of problem the person had, and these counselors would try to create a scene, a short skit, Or sometimes a tableau, and I'm going to go into that with you later today, what tableau does. But it's a scene. They would create it to show that person what that conflict looks like and how it might be carried forward, how it might be resolved. Very creative. They'd come up with it there. They'd listen to the person's story, and then they'd go off and make a little circle for maybe 5 minutes at the most, and then they'd step out on stage and do it. So I'm going to give an example where they did my problem once. And so I went out to one of these events, and they said, would you like to share your conflict? And I was like, oh, okay, I'll do this. And, I was kind of shy in front of everybody to share my conflict, but I did it. So my personal experience with psychodrama revealed my anguished self from cultural and structural conflicts that harm my children. Self-care ensued after the creative expressions of intrapersonal distress from non-control of harm. Affirmations help in the context of non-control. So to elaborate what the problem was, so you've heard before in the program about how I have children who look very different from me, and they're treated differently in society. They're often treated very unfairly. And they come home from school and they tell me about these situations or different scenes in society or places they go where they're encountering all kinds of isms. And it bothers me a lot. And sometimes I just want to cry. I'm just like, I want to change this situation. I don't want people treating my children like that. And sometimes I go out with them and I'm 2 steps away from them and they're doing something, and I see people how people are treating them because they don't know I'm connected to them. And sometimes they do it when I am connected to them. So it bothers me a lot. Now, I'm the oldest sister of a group of siblings, and my father left when I was 1 year old. So I had a single mom and all these kids, and I had to be in charge of all my younger brothers and sisters and take care of them, and no complaint there, right? But it took a lot of responsibility for me to do that. So I have come to realize that one of my issues is I need to be in control, because I had to be in control of them to keep them safe, And so now I have 2 children who I can't protect, and I can't control what's going on around them, and it's driving me crazy. And I have sometimes a lot of anguish about that. So anyway, they made a scene right in front of me in this psychodrama event to help me move forward with that. And it was very, very good. I very much benefited from that. So psychodrama, so acting it out. So just to finish this, so when I was a student in first level university, I had heard about psychodrama, and I was very curious about it. I didn't want a career in acting or anything like that, but I heard about it. So I became a volunteer in a local psychodrama group, and I would show up once or twice a month and ask, can I just do something here so I can watch you? Can I help set the scene or do something and help you do this? And a couple times I actually performed with them once I got the gist of what they were doing. And I was really learned to respect this therapeutic use of drama. Okay, here's another example of applied theater. I'm not going to go through all of them because this would take all week. There's so many types. But this one is theater of witness. So testimonial theater is one where people come in and they share their stories of violence. And they testify they were in the midst of it, and maybe they were one of the perpetrators. They actually get up on the stage and they share what they did with, quite often, someone else who also was in the conflict but was the enemy, was the other side of the conflict. Very, very dynamic situation. Not everybody can do this. But testimonial theater has been produced in areas where there has been direct high violence to help people come back together and build community, to help the audience see that, let them come watch this and help them heal. So one aspect I'm sharing here is from Jennifer Miller and her work in Northern Ireland and in Philadelphia, USA, which is in the part of Philadelphia characterized by very high violence. And so she watched as a graduate student how these theater of witness TOE were facilitated in these areas of violence, and how the people who were the actors in it, if you will, got up on stage and they told their stories. And some of them were police, and some of them were not. And there was a lot of distrust in the beginning. So she documented this, and she analyzed what they were saying over a couple of years. She was still doing this when she wrote her story about this in this book. So, in theater of witness, creative and participatory interactions with the other has led to improved perspectives, empathy, and healing the audience as well as the performers. Personal healing from trauma, finding the medicine, has been a result of TOE, theater of witness. And Sepenik is a theorist of that process. So theater in school, I brought this up once for you, and so I think this is a review, but I just wanted to mention it again in this presentation. So theater in school, I mean, this is a little more common that we have students producing plays in school or getting a script and producing the play that they didn't write. There's value in all of that. So this one is about how the students looked at a major structural conflict that involved homicide of females, hence the term femicide, and they responded to femicide. They studied the data. These were high school students, and they got the data from a museum about women who had been killed in their community, their pictures, their stories, how they died. They went to that museum, and then they gathered more and more data, and they started watching in their society over the course of a year and noticing how there's all this behavior that happens that leads to females getting killed. And so they created scripts. They created stories, and they created scripts. And they acted out some of them for the younger grades in transformation of gender behaviors. But for their own upper grade levels, they did the script with, here's a play about how all this behavior, this negative behavior, builds up to femicide. Now, here's a conversion of that story without all those behaviors. Here's an equity scene. Here's a respect scene between the genders. And so that's very powerful, and it was documented and analyzed by some graduate students and a professor, and that's their names down at the bottom. Whoops, I skipped one. So I did that. I think I'm going the wrong way. There we go. So this one is about an elementary school, and what they did in the elementary school is they had the students learning about activists and activists in their nation and other nations, and they didn't just learn her history, they then worked with it. So they chose for themselves, they had to write a play and produce a play every year, and they chose for themselves every year which conflict in the society that they were going to illustrate in their play, which conflict did they want to perform, and they wrote the whole script, they made their own costumes, they made their own set, and they produced the play, and the community and the parents came to the play. It was a big event, it took 3 months every year, not just doing that, but that's what they worked on it every year. And so I'll read this to you in case you can't read it back there. Engaging students seriously as artists and intellects makes it possible to introduce even the youngest children to the injustices and inequities that prevent peace and undermine human rights. And that's by Jim Assman, who was the principal of this school. He retired, and then he chose to write about what was going on there so other people could know. This school had a very clear mission about human rights and peace. It was in their mission. So all the teachers, all the administrator, all the parents clearly knew that their education was going to include these concepts. I think that is very important to any school or education setting you would work into. Children who learned about the activism of people who worked to change situations of structural conflict that evidence violations of human rights wrote their own scripts and designed their costumes. Oops, looks like I got cut off on that one. Okay, and then the last one I'm going to share with you is, as far as applied performance is healing through dance. So dancers, including migrants from war zones, suffering in severe poverty, widespread disease, family and societal violence, with extreme gender limitations in townships of Durban, South Africa, have healed in the Flatfoot Dance Company through the dancers' self-realizations, along with their sense of belonging in the community and the world. This is by Leanne Lutz. She is the founder of Flatfoot Dance Company, and she also wrote a chapter about it. In the context of distrust and fear of Black African foreigners, in addition to competition for limited survival resources, the dance company responds to individual traumas and structural violence. So let me illustrate this for you more. So this is an area of South Africa. It's not Cape Town. It's a little more further away, and it's very depressed, and it has quite a few migrants, if you will, or immigrants from other countries in Africa where there's been extreme violence and war, and they're not safe there. So they've migrated into Durban, South Africa, and other areas. And you know, Durban is already a very depressed place with lack of resources, quite often lack of water to drink or use otherwise. And so people are they're suffering in every kind of conflict there is. And then you add cultural conflict, because they're looking at, well, we're already struggling here, and now we have these foreigners. A lot of them are youth. Some of them are former combatants in war zones who would never be accepted back into the society where they lived, moving to other places. And well, these other places don't trust them. They don't want to accept them either. So it's a really, really, really conflicted area, as well as depressed. And Leanne decided to, she was a dance professor performing arts, do something for these youth. So she created a dance company. She's still a professor, but she runs this dance company. It's a nonprofit. It's not making any money. And everybody's welcome to come, and they have, you know, females and males come into there. And she does not teach ballet. She does not teach the traditional European-rooted performing arts that are so common in universities. She invites those youth in there to express their culture and their dance and teach others, create dances with the movements of their body that are familiar to them in their home cultures, to celebrate being African, and to celebrate learning how to dance together and move together as a group, even though they didn't trust each other in the first place. And this has been even more important for the females, because the females really don't have many places to go here. It's not because of religion, it's just culture and poverty. If they don't have an education and they don't have some kind of skill to get a job, then where are they going? And how are they going to support their families, which are coming? So anyway, a number of them have learned to become professional dancers just through this nonprofit dance company that this professor takes the time to run. There's another one in Cape Town, South Africa. These are two other professors. One's from Norway and one's from Cape Town. The Norwegian one flies down 3 or 4 times a year to participate in this dance instruction. So they facilitate this instruction also with youth, and they teach them dance and all kinds of creative movement but they also incorporate the graphic arts. They take them to museums, and then they try to teach them to relate what they see in the painting, what they see in the drawing, what they see in the sculpture, as how they use their bodies. It's really interesting how they translate the concepts across both. So these students are getting both graphic and performing arts, again, celebrating their African heritage and bringing it to the forefront. I need to point out here that any training in their indigenous languages is not allowed across these regions of Africa. So they are taught Afrikaans as their language, which is a form of Dutch and English, because the Dutch most recently colonized there. And so they're supposed to be independent now, but they're still very constrained by language and a lot of racism and classism in society. They're still very, very separated in many ways. So there's a quote from one of the students in the class when the teacher said, well, so are you getting anything out of this? And what they said before this is, yes, you're getting us out of the walls of the school. We're going to the museums. We're finding places where we can move our bodies. We're not stuck in a chair and we're not in school. But this is the next thing they said. Because art miss, gives you that. Makes you more confident, miss. More you know, miss, it boosts your self-esteem more, miss, and makes you do more things. Want to achieve more things in life. So that's one of the students whose response was documented. So these are just snippets, just little examples of how peace education has been happening through the arts at all levels and not necessarily in schools. Outside of schools, by non-NGOs, by people who volunteer their time or expand their profession to be, oh, I'm a teacher, I'm a professor, but I'm also over here helping people with these interventions. And they don't see them as interventions. I'm just calling it that. These wonderful opportunities to help people express themselves and build their self-confidence, build their self-knowledge, become aware of what their body knows, heal those areas of harm, learn to work with each other, be creative, learn how to set up a dance, learn how to set up a play, learn how to do therapy through psychodrama and many other ways. So the performing arts are essential in peace education, and they need to be expanded. Okay, so let's finish up here with indigenous aesthetics. I don't know how much of your indigenous heritage in Mizoram is being brought into your curriculum, and I won't ask you that right now, but it should be. Nature's aesthetics functions stimulate the condition of peace and performative responses to it by humans. Connectivity with and care of nature, along with artistic responses to it, are aspects of traditional land-based living and learning. The respect for and oneness felt with nature that indigenous cultures cultivate through holistic learning with embodied, sensorial, spiritual, cognitive, and aesthetic interactions are profound. Vicki Kelly provides insight to understanding from that process. And I couldn't fit the quote very well here, so let me move down. Reverence for all the beings in nature and land where they live builds peace through ethical relationality, where performance of indigenous rituals and ceremonies often express. Peace-building education in schools and performance contexts needs not only authentic inclusion of information about indigenous as well as other cultural performances that convey peace. Greater inclusion in schools where it exists of indigenous pedagogies that involve storytelling and artistic expression may build through reconnection, relationality, and healing with nature, and intercultural understanding. Interconnections between and beyond reified disciplines and worldviews are crucial for peace building through education. Okay, so we're going to end with that. I'm going to ask if you have any questions, and I'm going to keep the slide open, the presentation open, so if you want me to scroll back up and down, I'll be happy to do that. And I understand that you had a really big challenge getting here today because it's pouring, as we say, cats and dogs outside. It's very, very heavy rain and a lot of flooding. I know where I came from, there was no power, no Wi-Fi. How do I survive? Okay, so can I clarify anything? There were a lot of concepts here. All right. We, I don't know what time it is. Anyway, is it time for a break? I think it's time for a break. Okay, let's take a break.